In this whole chapter, we're working on cropping images after we shoot them. And in this particular segment, I want to really focus on simplifying images. We've got a variety of images to look at here. And let's go ahead and just make a virtual copy of our first image by doing our command or control and then apostrophe. And let's take this in and look at it. And this is, the image, the Kodiak wave image we've looked at throughout the course because it is a strong composition. And in this case, it's a really good example of what I call pre-cropping. Like when I shot this image, I fully intended to crop it when I shot the image. Because of the ratio demands of what the camera can capture, in order for me to capture this entire segment here that I really wanted to, I had to capture much more of the image, particularly the foreground, than I wanted. So when I compose this image, I'm thinking, all right, I'm going to get rid of all this, and I'm really focusing my attention on this composition up here. No doubt about it. In a lot of cases, when I'm putting together a panorama, I would take multiple shots and just take out the foreground when I do that. But because it's a dynamic composition, I've got to shoot the wave all at one time because it's moving. So what would we do to crop this image? Well, of course, the first thing we would come in and let's go to the crop tool, and we would always, look at and see if there's any sort of straightening we need to do in our image. Take care of that first. And then I'm going to go ahead and crop the bottom of this image out. And we want to get rid of all this because it's dead space, right? It's really not very interesting. So I'm going to pull this up. And how much do I pull it up? Well, heck, I don't know. It's different from one image to another, right? I don't want it too tight. That's too tight. There's really not quite enough wave there. There's too much water there. So, it's a judgment call. And sometimes I'll do it 3 or 4 different times with a couple of different virtual images to see what I like best. All right. But when you finally get what you want just enough cushion in here, but not too much. And then you hit that. And then you might decide, there's a little bit too much. All right. So I'm going to just take it up a little bit more and then hit it again. And we'll go back to the grid view and then select both. And we can do a comparison of the original and the final. So this particular image is about pre-cropping in your mind when you actually shoot the image. There's absolutely nothing in the world wrong with that. In fact, it's a great thing to do. In fact, we're forced to do it here if we want to capture the entire scene that we want on a dynamic image. All right, similarly, let's make another virtual copy. Let's go into this image. We've got Ketchimak Bay and the southern Kenai Mountains, shot in winter. Again, I captured more than I wanted because then I really wanted it from slope to slope with the glacier in the middle ground here. And we've got dead space on this image for sure. Like all this area up in the sky, I'm going to pull this down here. The water's nice, but I'd like to get rid of the antenna. And a little less water would be good. And I'd like to have a little bit more sky and a little bit less water, so there's asymmetry there. And notice that the horizon lines are well above and below center. Boom. So there's a nice crop of that. And we'll do a compare and contrast. And notice how much better this image is. We've really focused the content on the key portions of the image. All right, and to just change kind of subjects a little bit, let's go into our sponges. We shot down in Great Barrier Reef in Australia, and we look at this. It's not a bad-looking image, but look at all this dead space out here, right? This image is really about the sponges. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to crop this down here like this, and I'm going to crop this like this. I could leave it just like this. That's not a bad crop because this is kind of nice here, or I might decide to just take it all in like this and make it just about the sponges. Either one works okay. In either case, you'll notice when we do the comparison of the two that this really focuses in. This is a nice portrait of the sponges and gets rid of the dead space. And notice how effective that is. This is not a huge crop, but it sure is an effective one. And let's take a look at the saguaro. I love this one. Love to show this one because it's such a great example of image within image. When I look at this file, top 2/3 is nice. It's simple. This nice eye line. We can make it asymmetrical. The bottom half is way too busy. All right. So the solution is let's just get rid of it. All right. This is such a nice image to crop, and we'll give it just a little bit of asymmetry, and you can decide where you want more sky on one side or the other, kind of where the most interesting part of the sky is. And I think I'm going to take a little bit more sky on the left-hand side to make room for this portion over here of the saguaro. And again, we go back to these two and press N to do a before and after, an image within an image crop. And this is not a particularly interesting image, but this one sure is. And notice how that vertical format now really matches the vertical eye line of the saguaro. And of course, we couldn't do an exercise here of cropping without working with zip. And the point that I want to make here on this one is let's go to the crop tools. This is a nice portrait all by itself. I consider this to be a semi-environmental portrait because I've got some blurred mountains in the background, which reminds me of where we shot this in Kodiak. But there's another way to crop this, right? If I just want this to be all about zip, I can crop this in here, leaving enough room, enough of a cushion so we don't constrict him too much. And hit there, we go back to this, and we compare the two. Both of them are nice. It's just this one is more of an environmental portrait, and this one is just all about zip. So cropping is such a powerful tool, and the more you do it, the better you'll get at it. And it's just a great skill to have. And you'll learn to pre-crop in your mind like I was talking about earlier on. And then after you capture your image, you'll learn to get better and better at simplifying it and creating asymmetry with your crops. And we'll work on that a little bit more in the next section.